Angie. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being a part of today's Answer Hour. We are excited about being able to do a brief demo of campus, and then also we're interested in hearing from you as always. If you have comments, questions, certainly during the course of the demo, if you have questions that come up, please use the chat box. We will be collecting your comments, and anything that we're not able to address directly here today, we will follow up with information to answer those questions or address your comments. And by all means, please share those because we certainly know that if you're thinking it, then someone else, or maybe many, someone's else, many people are also having the same thoughts or comments. So please use the chat function. Let us hear from you so we know what you're thinking and whatever questions you might have as we move forward. For today, we're going to briefly do some updates about our training plans. You may have seen new information that's come out from the department in the last couple of days, so we'll talk about that briefly, and then we will be going into a demo of how to file a notice of representation. This is one of those things that's fairly foundational, one of the most fundamental things that we do, and we figured today with an audience that spans the wide spectrum of people who practice in the work comp space. We figured that we would do that while we have you here. And we will just use this as a chance again to provide updates about campus, what's going on, and hear directly from you with questions. So, with that, let's talk briefly about tools and resources that are available now for everyone as we get closer to our launch on November 2nd. Some of this may be new news, but most of it I'm hoping will be information that you've seen or heard previously. First and foremost, we would ask that you continue to visit our homepage on or the webpage, the DLI website that's dedicated to Work Comp Campus Training. The webpage has all of the resources from our August sessions that are available to you at your leisure. Feel free to use that for self-directed learning. It's a good refresher, just a way to sort of get back up to speed if you've been away from some of our trainings or you've not had an opportunity to delve into a lot of detail around campus as of yet. So we would ask that you take a look at that information first and foremost. And then you'll also see when you visit the webpage that there is an updated schedule of training opportunities along with registration details. That information has also been sent out through a Gov delivery message. So please go to the webpage for that and take a look, and you can get signed up today for training that is scheduled to begin starting the week of October 12th. On the same DLI training page, you will also see a link to our external technical manual. The manual is very lengthy. It's over 200 pages, and it provides a range of guidance, step-by-step guidance, along with some screenshots and visual aids that will help you understand how to perform job functions in campus. This manual can be downloaded. The link is listed there, and we would ask that you go download that, have it available for things that you may be using more often than not. It's just good to have a cheat sheet, maybe print it out or bookmark it in your in Chrome or what have you, so you can pull it up at a moment's notice and refer to it as we roll out campus. And then finally, just a reminder that there are YouTube videos. So there is a campus video playlist of about 20 videos that cover a range of topics and different functions, including one of the things that we'll be discussing here today around filing a notice of representation. So again, this is something that is just designed to be an aid for you, your staff, your partners as you are learning campus and just beginning to navigate it as we get closer to November 2nd. Real quick, let's talk a little bit more about our updated schedule for training. So just as a reminder, we will be having demos today, next Tuesday, and the following Tuesday, along with Q&A. So please bring your comments, questions, what have you, to the answer hour. And of course, during the week, you can email us at the dli.wcmp@state.mn.us email address with any questions that you might have. So today we will be going over notice of representation, and then next week we will be discussing how to file and respond to a medical rehab request. We'll briefly go into more detail around the updated list of sessions and topics that are available. And again, this information is listed on the DLI campus training page that was previously linked. And as I mentioned before, the training materials are designed to build off of what we provided earlier this summer, with a focus on the most fundamental tasks and steps that the majority of our law firm users, attorneys, will need to master and have comfort with as we transition into campus. And then in addition to that, there have been a number of comments and questions and inquiries around group management, and there will be dedicated group management training available. And that information is also listed on the website. And then finally, again, just to reiterate, please use the chat function. The questions that you send to us, the things that get captured in these answer hours, the information that gets forwarded to the dli.wcmp email address, those questions, those inquiries are being used to help develop FAQ documents and quick reference guides that supplement our training and fill in some gaps that maybe we haven't done as good a job as we could have in explaining or articulating information about the system. So you're helping us by calling out these questions. So by all means, please share those with us throughout the course of the day and moving forward. So real quick, let's just review some of the previous training, what we call personas from the August curriculum. So you can see here, there's a wide range of stakeholders and parties who will be using campus, from healthcare providers to employers to insurers and trading partners. But for this audience, we are mostly interested in attorneys or staff members who work for a law firm. And previously, our focus was on Campus 101 for law firms and dispute resolution. Now, as we are moving closer to November, we've revised and revamped the range of trainings that are being offered. So again, if you're an attorney or you work for a law firm, you can certainly go back and take a look at your leisure for self-paced training or with Campus 101 and the dispute resolution training that was made available previously. Beyond that, there will be live sessions. So there is a new and improved Campus 101 for law firms, along with information around how to access documents, how to initiate a dispute, how to schedule in campus, and then, as I mentioned previously, group management training for those people who have registered as group admins. So take a look at the training page. This information is listed there. And we would encourage you to begin the process of signing up and getting registered today to ensure that you have a spot in the different training sections that are available between now and the end of the month. So with that, I'm now going to work in concert with my colleague, Brian Mack, to do a demo on how to file a notice of representation. So Brian, if you're there, introduce yourself and then we'll let you take the screen and we'll get started.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Hi, everybody. It's Brian Mack here. See if I can share my screen so we can go to the test environment for campus. We can walk through the note. Is that coming through okay, Rich?
Yep, I see it nice and bright. Good job.
Well, I'm here for you. Should you, do you want me to just go ahead and log in?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get logged in. And again, this is one of these things as we talk about filing a notice of representation. We think it's a foundational act and one of those things that people are just going to be doing more often than not. And so we thought it would be a good idea to demo it today. I will also tell you that if you go to the external training manual that I referenced earlier, you will see a lot of this information covered on pages 49 and 50. So just for reference, you can pull that up at a later date and time. But what Brian is going to do today is go through the process of filing a notice on behalf of a party to a claim. And I see here, Brian, that you're already logged in. We see your queue is all set, and it looks like you've got a couple of claims that are listed there in the queue.
So these will be, like you're saying, Richard, claims. These are my claims that are in my queue, claims I already have access to. But because for our purposes today, don't already have access to Cleopatra Calderon, and we will, when we're filing a notice of representation, we won't have access yet, so she won't show up under my claims. So we're going to start up here.
There you go. So we're going to click Submit a Filing and access a case or claim. And that takes us here to what are you trying to do? Hit the drop down. And the first thing you see right there, file a notice of appearance or representation. So Brian is going to hit that and go to the next screen. There we go. Now, one of the things I wanted to call out here for everyone's benefit, and again, please feel free to chime in if you have questions. There are a few different ways that you potentially can get access to the information that you're looking for. Either you can use, you see there's three different avenues that you can pursue here. If you use the WID along with the employee date of injury, a campus file number along with the employee last name, or using the employee's last four digits of social security number along with the date of injury and the employee last name. One thing I will mention, Brian is going to go through and type in the campus file number along with the employee last name. Um, it is crucial that as you fill these out, that the employee date of injury is accurate. It's one of the things that's different about campus compared to our current system, and we're working right now to put together some communications around that. But there will need to be precision in the date of injury that's provided. If you enter in that field there the incorrect date of injury, you will get an error message that will direct you to contact our help desk, and there are some steps there that will need to be taken before you can access the claim information. So stay tuned for more information around that. But for purposes of our demo today, Brian is just going to use the campus file number and the employee last name to access the information. All right.
And you guys can notice that it's not case sensitive, so I've got just some lowercase there.
Perfect. So we hit next, and then we advance forward to representation on a claim or a case under a claim. So for today, we're just going to focus on the claim. So we're going to hit that radio button, hit
Because I
next.
want access to the entire claim, not just to a rehab request or a medical request. I want everything under that date of injury.
Exactly. We hit our next button. And then here, this is where you tell us who you are representing. So for our first time through here, we're going to look at the employee, and that's Cleopatra Calderon. And then we're going to scroll down a little bit. Actually, Brian, can we take a step back? Can you just hit employer
Sure.
real quick, just so we can show the difference between one of the things there? So if you hit the employer button and you identify that you're representing Mall Snacks Inc., there is not a requirement for an uploaded retainer agreement or
Or
other
notice of rep.
notice of representation. You want to talk a little bit about that, Brian, and articulate why that's different for employer versus employee?
Yeah, sure, Richard. As all of you in the legal world know, when you're representing an injured worker, you've got a notice of representation or retainer agreement filed by the employee, or rather signed by the employee, but when you're a defense lawyer, you're doing a notice of rep, that's something you complete, and your client, State Farm or State Fund or whoever the employer might be, doesn't actually need to sign it, so we don't need you to upload. Instead, you're going to generate the notice of rep just like you would generate a medical request or a rehab request. So we don't need you to start by uploading something in this process if it were a notice of rep if you're defense counsel. But in this case,
Yep,
let
now
me
we're going
start
to go
out.
back. Yeah, go back to our employee, Ms. Calderon. So you can click on that for the employee and Ms. Calderon, and there you can see what Brian was mentioning before. For an employee, there is a requirement that you upload the retainer agreement. So we'll hit that.
And I'm going to go to my C drive. Sorry, go ahead. What was that, Angie?
Oh, no, you're fine. While you're doing this, I just wanted to call out too that if it's a situation where you are representing multiple parties, so I know a lot of the time you may be representing the employer and the insurer together, you actually do have the ability to check both of those boxes as well. So just so you all are aware, if you are representing multiple parties, you can do that all in one notice of appearance.
Great clarification.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then
So
here you
this
can see now, Brian. Yeah, go ahead,
this
Brian.
test
Talk a little bit about
attachment.
that.
Oops, sorry, Richard.
No,
The
you're
test
fine. Go
attachment
ahead.
would be my retainer agreement, and it would be signed by the employee. I mean, I'm not pulling it up, it's just a blank document here, but you guys can see it's in a PDF format because anything you're going to upload to campus has got to be in a PDF.
Perfect. And then we're just going to go into that dialog box there and type in a little description, test retainer agreement. Perfect. And now we're going to upload that. Wonderful. And there you can see it actually pop in. And now as Brian scrolls down, you can see there are a couple of boxes there under the notice of representation that would need to be checked. Those are just additional acknowledgments. And then when you scroll down even further, the last step here is the attorney ID that needs to be entered, and that's the bar ID number, right, Brian?
That's right.
All right, perfect. So we're going to click next on that. And then you can see here, there's a listing of the various parties to be served, and Brian has gone through and identified those and clicked on them. All right. And so as you move forward, scrolling down, you can again see more boxes to be checked. So there's the declaration. You check that, declaring under penalty of perjury that everything in the document is true and correct, required by Minnesota statute. Go ahead,
Going up
Brian.
here for just a second, Richard, probably be good for us to point out to everyone that as we can see, mall snacks and lumbermen's are electronic service. It's defaulted to electronic service because they have, because they're users of the system. They're in the system, and so we can do that electronic service. Cleopatra, we actually don't need to serve her, but if we're a defense counsel, we're doing a notice of rep, and we serve the injured worker, and the injured worker, Cleopatra, isn't a user in campus, it will say mail, US mail over here under service method, which will tell you that you've got to print it and drop a copy in the mail to her. But here, everything already shows us we can do this all electronic.
Awesome.
Do we want to preview it, Richard?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go down, and by previewing the document, we felt it made sense to just show you this before we submit it so you can get a feel for what this actually looks like as it's generated. You can see this coming up here in a second. And if you can expand your screen just a little bit, just so folks can see it. So there we have the notice of appearance or representation that gets filed. You see the campus file number, the employee ID, the date of injury, and then all the information for the parties, the e-signature that's provided there. along with the affidavit of service.
With the electronic service list.
There you
Brian
go.
and Richard,
Mhm.
I just wanted to interrupt really quickly. We've got a number of questions in the chat. So
Okay.
there was just a question on if there's more than one date of injury, do they need to file multiple notices of appearance or notice of rep twice? Can it be filed on 2 dates of injury at once?
And that's a good question, Angie, or I can't see who asked the question, but it's a good question. And as things stand right now, you will need to file a separate notice of rep or notice of appearance for each date of injury that you are representing someone for.
Thanks, Brian.
So if
Okay.
you're an injured worker, if you're an employee's attorney, you'll have the same notice of or retainer agreement, presumably, but you'll need to submit that retainer agreement on each of the claims that you are going to represent the employee on.
Thank you, Brian. So a couple more questions here. I can actually field this next one, but just asking about the process of what happens once the notice of rep is submitted, if it's reviewed at DLI, and how long it takes to get connected to the case. So to answer that one really quickly, unless it's a situation where you have some sort of exception to your representation, so if or a limit on your representation, which would typically be either a time limit or some other type of limitation, which you can indicate on the previous page. If neither of those are true for your notice of appearance or representation, it does give you immediate access to the case. Now, this form in particular is very, very specific to either legal professionals that are related to an attorney or attorneys, and you would need to be part of a law firm, or we would have to have you set up as a sole practitioner in order for you to be able to submit this. Just because we have your bar IDs and we ask you to confirm that, we're able to kind of expedite your access to a claim or case unless you have some sort of limitation on your representation. And then there's a couple more here. What if the employer doesn't file the first report of injury? So I'm a little confused on that one. If you could add a little bit more context. I think it was Michael. Does the employee, move into the next one, does the employee have the option of being electronically served? If so, what steps do they take to do this? Brian, I can hand it back to you on that one.
Okay. Well,
So
as far
actually,
as
Brian,
the
I'll step in here, Brian. Actually, looks like Mike Solhigh, one of our staff members, has responded to this one. So Mike clarifies that the employee does have the option of being electronically served if they are registered with campus. But if they're not registered with campus, then the service would go out by U.S. mail.
right. So in this case here, if Cleopatra were a user in the system with a profile in the system like Mall Snacks, then she would be listed as electronic service here too.
Perfect. Thank you for that question. Oh, looks like the question came from Angel. Yep, and thank you, Mike, for chiming in.
And as far as the question about when someone wants to file a notice of rep or a retainer agreement on a claim where the employer or insurer has not yet filed a FROI, like for example, a med-only claim, then my understanding is that we could set up a claim shell could be set up so that we can start to and then we can build out that claim with information that we might need to reach out and get.
Awesome. I think that addresses all of the questions that I have in the chat so far. Just for clarification, if you all wouldn't mind just making sure that your chat settings are set to everyone, just so that way we have multiple people who are kind of looking at the chat and they can catch your questions.
And there
This
you can
shows.
see. Yep, there you go, Brian. Go ahead, take it.
So there's our confirmation that it's submitted, and then like Angie said, we'll be giving the defense lawyers the access right away, And so that claim will show up. Like I told you guys before, just pretend in my queue you didn't see that Cleopatra down there. But now once it refreshes, you will see her claim right down here in my claims. And you'll be getting an email too that will say you've got that. I understand, Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we're talking about a retainer agreement filed by an employee's attorney, then like usual, like we do right now, someone would manually review that retainer agreement just to make sure everything's fine, and then we would give that access to.
Yeah, we can certainly verify that. I believe that access is granted just because we have that bar ID that we can associate it with, but we can verify that
I see.
offline as well. One other thing, just to note, this is probably a good spot to mention. I know Brian showed you what this would look like filling this out as an attorney, but something that was very important and that the law community was very vocal about was the ability to have their support staff complete these on their behalf. So just so you all are aware, I know we've said this before, but you can create relationships in campus amongst attorneys and then paralegals, legal assistants, or other legal professionals within your firm. And that allows those individuals to submit filings on your behalf.
Great. Thanks, Angie. It does look like we got a follow-up question here from Michael. In cases, it says, I'll just read it here. In many cases, the employer and the insurer ignore the report of injury. Thus, the attorney will have to file the claim petition to initiate the dispute. Thus, what if the employer and insurer ignore notice and fail to file the FROI?
My understanding is that through that claim shell process, the employee's attorney who wants something done on the claim can submit something on that claim, even though it doesn't already exist by virtue of lack of a FROI. And that claim will then be created as kind of a temporary claim, as a claim shell. We will then be reviewing those shells, determining if a claim needs to be actually created, and if so, we will be reaching out for whatever information we need to create that claim. So that claim will can now be generated, existing in the system, even if a FROI was not filed.
Great. Thanks for that, Brian.
And that's really the beauty of this claim shell functionality in campus. As everybody knows, everyone's had a situation, well, especially plaintiff lawyers, employer attorneys too, have had the experience of trying to file something, and then we here in ADR tell you, I'm sorry, there's no such claim in the system. We can't do anything. Get someone to file something, file a FROI or some other case creating document, like the caller said about a claim petition. Here, we can get we can get it moving by virtue of that claim shell function.
And Brian, there's just a couple of follow-ups, just clarifying that if there's a claim petition that needs to be filed, that needs to be initiated with OAH via C-Track. So we've got Chris Raymond, who's weighing in on that. So yeah, that's again just a reminder that there are those things that will still belong to OAH even after campus is up and running. So, and I believe, and we've sent
Right.
out a few reminders around that. So again, that's one of those things that we'll continue to make sure we are clear about the distinction between what needs to be filed in campus and what needs to be filed via OAH and C-Track.
That's right. No changes in the jurisdiction, no changes in what needs to be filed at DLI versus OAH.
Exactly. Okay. Here's a follow-up question, Brian. If an individual is not, quote unquote, served with a document, will they have access to that document once they gain access to the file?
I would say, Richard, yes. If you have access to the file, to the claim, then you have access to all the documents in that claim. So there you might actually see a situation where, hey, there's a medical request there and I was never served with it. Just like right now, when someone sends in a request for a copy of the DLI file, you're going to get all the documents that are in the file for that injury date, regardless of who was served with which of them. And so here too, if you get access to that claim, here the Cleopatra claim for the date of injury 9/1 of 20, you're going to see everything that's there. In fact, we can take a look at that. Like me to open that one up, Richard?
Sure. We got some extra time here. Let's give it a whirl.
So say I'm the attorney and I filed my either notice of rep on behalf of the employer and insurer or my retainer agreement on behalf of the employee. And now Cleopatra's claim for that date of injury, and maybe for more also, but at least for that one, is now in my claims. I can go into it. So we're not going to be sending you copies of the record anymore. We're simply giving you all access to everything that's there as far as the documents go. So don't need to go through all the basic information that we have that we capture, but now that you're in this, and again, I'm in as Bill Preston, I'm in as the attorney who's got access. So this is what you guys are going to see. Down here, you can see a whole bunch of different pieces of information. What you're probably looking for, though, is the documents. And here they all are. Here's the notice of rep, actually, that we just did a few minutes ago. Any of these can be viewed, opened, downloaded, and saved to your own computers, printed at your office, anything you need to do. So, for example, we'll just open this one. This is the one we just did. We have the service letter with the affidavit, and we have the attachment also. So this is what will happen also if it were a medical request. You're going to see the medical request which you've generated up here, and down here will be all the attachments that were submitted with the medical request. Printed, these can be downloaded.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Brian. Okay. Any other questions or comments? And thanks everyone for putting your comments and questions in the chat. This is helpful.
Since we're doing pretty good on time, I'm going to show everybody one little handy dandy trick, Richard, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So we're in the Cleopatra's claim here, and what you probably saw is that when I wanted to get out of that document that I'd pulled up, I ended up throwing myself back to the main screen and I was out of the claim. And that's bothersome because maybe you just want to look at one document, now you want to look at another one. You don't want to leave the claim. You want to stay in the claim. So what we can do, I'm in the claim right now, I'm viewing the documents. What I can do is instead of just normally doing a left click, and that's going to now bring that up in my main tab in Explorer or Chrome, I'm going to right click and open this notice of rep in a new tab. And this is something I'll admit to everybody, I forget to do it half the time, but I want to get into the habit of doing it, and I'll tell you, so I'm telling you guys all. So what we can see, can you all see up at the very top here?
Mm-hmm.
So now I've kept my main claim screen, but now in addition to the main claim screen, I have a document that we're just looking at. So if I'm done looking at it or done printing it or done downloading it, I'm going to X out of the document and I still stay. I'm still in the screen of the claim itself.
Oh, that's a great tip. And I think
big tip.
that's nice. Well, and just a reminder, I think that one of the things that we should just remind people is I think the system is optimized for Chrome. That's what I recall being told. So that's just another reason potentially why you can use Chrome to get the most out of it. And Brian, there was a question kind of in the spirit of what you were just showing us there. So going back to the preview document button that we showed people before. When you use that button, can you print out the document that you're previewing
I bet
before
you
you
can.
submit it?
Oh, that I don't know. Should we run it through again? Do you know if we can print it before we have submitted it?
That's a question that I think we might need to take offline just to test. It
Okay.
must be a little bit tricky. I know you could print the screens, but since it's kind of a modal within the screen, um, we just need to verify that it does print what's in that modal. But if you do want to try again, I think we've got some time. It may be possible that if you right click it, it gives you the option to print it. But that would just be kind of a browser functionality. So I apologize. That's why I'm a little bit uncertain on that. It would kind of depend on what the browser allows.
Well, let's
Well, we're
just
going
find
to
out
give
real
it a
quick. I'm
yeah,
going a
let's give
little
it a
bit
whirl.
quicker. So going a little
No, we're
quicker.
all good.
Employee, Cleopatra, upload it. Then the retainer agreement. And this is a retainer agreement. Attorney ID number. And like you were saying to people, Richard, or Angie was saying this actually, when you're in a law firm and you're a paralegal, you can do this on behalf of the lawyer.
And just as Brian is finishing that, we've got, it looks like a couple more questions in the chat. We'll get to those as soon as he's finished with this process.
So we're going to preview this thing again and see if it's apparent. Right? Looks like we can. Well, as we say in Inglourious Bastards, that's a bingo.
So just a few things of note. So we can see here that we can print it. The formatting will look a little bit different. Very important to keep in mind that even if you do print the preview of the document, you do still have to submit the service and everything. We would not consider this filed, obviously, until everything is served and filed. So if you'd like to print that for your own records, that's great. But we can just wanted to reiterate, you still obviously need to finish with that service process.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is
So
actually
we
a
can.
perfect thing. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
I just had somebody
I'm just
ask
going to
about
submit it again.
saving a draft, so I was gonna have you back out and
Oops.
say the draft one. We can show with something else.
Yeah. All right.
No shortage of forms
Well,
to
I guess.
submit.
This is an easy one, so we might as well just keep on this one, and we'll talk now about if you want if we're missing some piece. That's a good one, Angie.
Yeah, and I just had somebody said the previous screen had a save as draft button. Is that what you would do to have the attorney review before it is submitted for filing? You certainly could do that. That save as draft is just going to save a copy of it so you can come back to it later. The attorney would not necessarily have access to this document that you're working on just because it would require that's pretty limited. The save as draft is very limited to the person who is working on the document. But you could always do that process of printing your preview and having them review it as well. And so Brian just showed you there the save as draft function. So we'll show you where it pops up for you to access it again.
I actually can't remember, Angie. I haven't looked at this for a little while.
No problem. Click the My Forms button. And then it should show a history of anything you submitted and then anything in draft status. And you can delete your drafts right from here as well.
Right. Everybody could see I've submitted that notice of appearance a few times now.
We know it works. That's
So
good.
we can just pull this thing up again.
Practice makes perfect, right?
All right. Right back to where we were.
All right. I've got a couple more questions in the chat if you don't mind. So just one asking, if I represent someone for one date of injury and I want to see their entire history of all DLI claims, will filing the notice of rep give me access to the entire file?
Who wants to take that? I can take it, or you can take it, Angie, or Richard.
I can take it if you'd like.
Go ahead.
That would, I think as we indicated earlier, this is kind of a one-for-one date of injury thing. But if you are not representing the employee, so let's say you're not representing them for every date of injury and you want to view those dates of injuries or those claim files, you can submit just a signed authorization. There is a pathway to do that in Campus, and we can certainly demo that next time. And then the process, I think, for how that would work as far as granting access to any and all dates of injury would be a little bit more of a manual process. But the notice of appearance or representation is specific for one date of injury. So if you're representing for multiple dates of injury, you'd need to submit this multiple times. If you just want to gain access to additional dates of injury, you just need to complete the authorization web form with the signed authorization specifying the dates that you are wanting to view. And then I'll move to the next question. If one attorney in a firm has access to a claim, can everyone else in the firm also view it? So Brian, Richard, I'll let you guys go ahead and answer that one.
The attorney is the primary person who would have access to the claim when they filed a notice of rep or a retainer agreement. But depending on, and this is one of the two trainings Angie's going to be doing soon, depending on anyone who is in that lawyer's group in their firm and has what we call a relation with that lawyer in the campus environment will be able to also have access to see those claims. So the lawyer's access extends to anyone in that lawyer's group who has the proper permissions within the firm.
Yes, that's a really good point. Just something to kind of keep in mind with attorneys. So, in law firms, it's a little bit different from some of our other entities like claim administrators, who maybe everyone's going to have access to every claim. The notice of appearance or representation is very specific to the attorney who's filing it. So the law firm itself would not be a party to the claim. The attorney would just be associated with an existing party. And as Brian said, we'll definitely be covering that quite a bit more in depth for those of you who are planning to attend that group management training.
But Angie, if the lawyer's paralegal or maybe even other lawyers were in that lawyer's group in the administration function of campus, would those lawyers not be able to, and paralegals not be able to see the claims that the primary lawyer has access to see?
Yeah, so that's all determined by relationships, which
Right.
we'll cover in that group management training. So the way that we have the relationship set up is attorneys would not typically, or I don't believe that the system allows for attorneys to be related to other attorneys. Attorneys would be related to either paralegals, legal assistants, or other legal professionals. So that's where there's that little bit of a difference.
And would a lawyer be able to grant some kind of a relationship to another lawyer? Like, say, if an associate is going to cover, if one lawyer is going to cover a conference for another lawyer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's not a way to do that by filing anything in Campus, but that's something that if it's necessary, we can definitely do that on the DLI side. We can circle up and figure out the exact process for how that would occur in the future. But as far as the notice of appearance or the file, viewing the file itself, you would need to have individual notices of appearance, or we would need to manually add an additional attorney to the file, is my understanding.
Okay, and the notice of appearance gives access to the lawyer and any support staff that the lawyer has in their group with the proper relation identified through that group management.
Yes, that is correct, Brian. So there's one more question here. I think we've hit the other ones about saving as draft. This one is if we want to file a notice of appearance for a Gillette injury, for example, and you are using a last date of employment or the first date of treatment. Can you explain how to initiate that process if nothing has been reported?
My thought, Angie, this would be no different from if someone was trying to file something on a discrete injury, like they slipped on ice, and if no FROI had been filed. As long as you've got a date of injury, like everybody knows, the Gillette dates of injury are going to vary from case to case, but ultimately you pick the one, you pick it. Once you've picked it, you submit it with that date of injury, just like you would a discrete injury.
Mm-hmm. And then just another question, can you remind us when the group management training will occur? So I think Richard put a link in the chat for the group management training, and the dates for that right now are 10/14 and 10/21, and those will also be sent out in a communication. And they'll be recorded. So if for some reason you can't make either of those sessions, we'll make those available via recording on our website afterwards.
And just a reminder that the training set for October 14th, registration is open. So if you want to go ahead and register, you can do so.
A few additional notes just about group administrators and group management, because I know I've gotten quite a few emails, and I'm guessing that ADR you're probably getting quite a few of these emails as well. If you completed a survey for group management for us, I believe that they initially were sent out in August, but we did send that link out again. If you have not heard anything from us, don't worry. We're still working through all of that information. So essentially, no news is good news as long as you submitted that survey. If for some reason you cannot remember if you submitted the survey or if you need to make changes to something on the survey, you can certainly send an email to our WCMP email address. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. So those of you who just aren't sure, if you can't remember if you submitted it or can't remember who you submitted, you can certainly send us an email request and we can provide that information for you.
Well, that's reassuring. Thanks, Angie. Good to point that out.
There you go, and there's the web address. So, Brian, I think we've submitted our quota of notices of representation on behalf of Ms. Calderon for the day. So we're going to let her and her attorney, Mr. Preston, off the hook. Thank you so much for this. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Again, as Angie just mentioned, if you have additional questions, please send those to the web address or the email address, dli.wcmp@state.mn.us. And we'll be happy to respond to those and also potentially leverage those for FAQs as we move forward. This has been a great interactive chat. We're going to go ahead and bring everything to a close real quick. Take a look at the training webpage that is linked above, and hopefully you will be able to find something that piques your interest, and you can go ahead and get registered. Registration is open for trainings that we have scheduled starting on the week of October 12th. So training scheduled for next week. Go ahead and please register. Thank you, everyone, for your comments, your questions, and for taking part in today's Answer Hour. We look forward to seeing you this time next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.